It is recording. We are ready for another episode of the Investor Warrior. But first,
People always say that you have to have money to make money, and that there's an extraordinary level of sacrifice on the road to success. So, how is it that investors like us, who didn't start out with much money and who don't rely on banks and credit, how is it that we can increase our income and build our wealth in a way that doesn't require us replacing one full-time job with another while still enjoying the things in life that matter most to us?
all right, I've been cutting it at that point, replacing one job for another. Welcome back to the Investor Warrior. I am the beautiful Investor Warrior's sidekick, the beautiful Carrie Like, who can't be with us today. We are having a wintry day. She is dealing with appointments and things like that. So our good friend Stephen Crawford, who you guys met last week, is joining us today, and we are going to carry the load today, right, Stephen?
Yeah, let's do it. Honestly, and I think we shared this when we were both on the call. We just love having Carrie on here because she just makes everything run so smoothly. And
Yeah.
so, but
Not to mention she's better looking than we are.
that's true. But it's one of those kids that sit on the bench all say, put me in, coach. And now she gets to be gone, and she gets to put us in and see what we do. And so if we screw it up too bad, oh well, I guess there's always next week.
Yeah. It's funny because it actually reminds me. See, she's done a good job of putting leaders in place, right? So yeah, she's got you and she's got me, and now the whole quest is how do I get leaders put in place so that I'm not going 12 hours a day
Oh
on
my
average
gosh.
the rest of my life. And we picked that up last week. We were talking about that. We did the six components, right, to how you build a real business that can run without you, right?
Yeah. And
Can
I
do.
think that's where we were really looking at what are those disciplines we need to have in place? What are the things we need to be able to assess,
Mhm.
evaluate, set clear goals around, and then execute? And I think those are kind of when we look at the way to actually pull those things together, that's really the recipe that we got to put together. And I think that's kind of where we left off, to really looking at those areas,
Yep.
evaluating those things, and saying where I'm at in all those areas. And so I hope you're an investor. If you are an investor or you are leading a business, an entrepreneur, you do have a methodology for evaluating those things. But if you don't, never fear. That's what we're going to talk about a little bit. So,
Absolutely. So where are we going to start today?
well, I think it was important, when you look at this, and because I know people, because obviously having licenses with all of these organizations and entities, people will read Traction, people will read The Business Coach by Brad Sugars, people will read all these elements, the E-Myth, and they'll look at these things and they'll say, well, this seems so easy to do.
Wait,
This,
you left out the ridiculous 4-hour work week.
oh yeah, the 4 hour work week. Tim Ferriss. I mean, I'm telling you, oh man, all I have to do is work 4 hours, and man, I'm going to be a billionaire. This is incredible. I love
I
this.
think I think even Tim Ferriss said that it's a metaphor. It isn't actually really uh, a literal outcome.
Well, and here's the thing. I mean, what are you doing with those 4 hours? I mean, it's like, are there four magic hours that if you were focused on a very
Mm,
specific thing, you would blow past your competition? Absolutely, there is. There's a secret to that.
right.
However, what most people think is simple, it is simple, but it's not easy. And that's kind of where I think we really need to look at some of the myths that we need to bust up a little bit before we kind of delve into kind of how to implement these disciplines in our lives, in our businesses.
I think you also said something important, which I think Tim Ferriss probably would back up, which is it isn't that it's just 4 hours start to finish. It's
Hmm.
that somewhere in the context of the week that we spend working, there are 4 magical hours where all the progress is made,
Yep.
right?
That's the progress. And no one's doing it. And so this is where Tim Ferriss is right, because no one else is doing it. If you do it in your business, in your industry, you're going to blow past your competition.
Hmm.
That's what's amazing about it.
Right. So how do we do it?
Well, I think first we have to just be honest about some things. Now, here's the thing. Right now, and Howie knows this, I'm over in my studio right now. I left my office. We've taken on our lights. We're actually moving out of the studio and going to be moving into a different studio. But my office is about 25 minutes away. And so, when I left to get here, when there was about 25 minutes between my office and here. But let me tell you what happened. On my
Mhm.
on my way over here, there was a couple surprises. A couple people slowed down. A couple people hit stoplights. A couple people did things, and I am notorious for doing what most entrepreneurs do, and that is lying to myself. I assume that when I take off, everything is going to go exactly the way it is planned. And that's what most entrepreneurs do. So if it's 19 minutes for me to get somewhere, I leave with 19 minutes to go. But that is a lie. You have to plan for the unexpected. And so the first thing we need to do is bust up the myth that things will go exactly as they're written on paper. You can have a plan.
Mhm.
I think it was, you said you can have a flight plan or fight plan, one of the boxers said. But when you get into the ring, you're down to your reflexes. So it doesn't matter what your plan is. No plan survives contact with the enemy. The moment you hit the ground running, you are going to find resistance. And most people don't anticipate. So the first lie and myth we got to break up is to anticipate resistance. Most leaders make a plan without the anticipation of resistance. If you read Traction, if you read the 4 Hour Work Week, if you read the E-Myth, if you read the Business Coach, you can grab those books and they're going to give you a plan. And those plans are valid, yet they don't take into account the resistance. And that's what most business leaders make the foolish mistake of doing, like I did on my way over here. And I was 5 minutes late because I anticipated no traffic. But there's going to be resistance. There's going to be traffic in everything we do. And so we have to stop lying to ourselves as if things are going to go according to plan. And because if you plan that way, you're going to be full of disappointments.
I love that statement. So, I want to make sure I get the verb right. So, all plans don't, was it consider contact with the enemy, or
Right.
was that the right verb? Consider?
So the
Or,
plans, every battle plan, and this actually comes this doesn't date me because I read it in a book just like 7 years ago, but it dates the author of this book. He got it from Reagan. Reagan had some decisions that he had to make, and someone would, Ronald Reagan, if anybody knows about American politics, was an actor. He was not a politician initially, and so he was an actor. And
right.
as an actor, he's like, it is absolutely ridiculous when I've never been in war for me to actually figure out every single move. And so he said, this was the idea: no plan survives contact with the enemy. No plan
Survives. There's the word, right? There is the verb.
survives. And so he
No
called it what he
plan.
called commander's intent. I'll tell you what my intention is, but the people on the ground have to make the decisions because no plan survives contact with the enemy. You must be able to overcome the resistance. You will get resistance in business.
And what do you think so there's a mistake here, right?
Yep.
And the mistake, I think you already articulated it, but there's a mistake that we tend to make, which is
We anticipate no resistance. And so we go into our plan without any type of contingencies. And then when we find resistance, we say the plan didn't work.
mhm.
We blame the plan. No, you have to blame your naivety. You have to blame your ignorance to the fact that you were going to meet resistance. Come on.
Yeah, I mean my mind is going to every single, like, I'm a structured guy, like I'm a really structured thinker, and it's one of those, I think, and I have this philosophy that everything in life is a dual-edged sword. Everything,
Mhm,
right? Everything serves us, and those things that serve us also disservice, right? And
mhm,
there's no silver bullet. And I think that I have this very, very structured way of thinking, and it serves me greatly because I'm able to take a lot of abstract stuff and get it organized. And one of the two businesses that I run is an IT consulting business, and I've made my living on that premise alone. That I can take this, because when you get into the technical world and you get into the world of engineers and really creative people, puzzle solvers, right? And think of a Rubik's Cube. It's not a linear process, right? It is this very abstract, ingenious, I think, level process for solving problems, right? Solving problems and getting stuff. And I'm the opposite, right? I'm a linear thinker, a left down, top down, left right. Where I've made my living is that abstract thinking and puzzle solving makes for really, really bad progress uh, structures, right? So I've been able to come in and marry my structured thinking with abstract thinking and get things from here to the end, right? By constantly unraveling and restructuring, and constantly unraveling and restructuring. And I've used a number of tools to do that, right? So the latest So I'll do a plug for Asana as a project planning tool, right? But I've used everything, right? I've been doing this for 35 years. I've used everything. And when you said that, I was just like, every time we draw out a project plan, right, with the Gantt chart and the whole thing, there's a little bit of contingency in there, but it really does just assume that this is going to happen, and then that's going to happen, and then this is going to happen, and that's going to happen. It never, ever goes that way.
I
Which,
know. And the
yeah,
mistake isn't that you don't have a contingency. The mistake is that you're emotionally attached to it going the direction it's going to go. So it's the emotional attachment that we have to the resistance, and when that takes place, we get bent out of shape. So if you're able to stay cool, calm, and collected, and I love to watch leaders who literally, it's like water falling off their back, even if they don't have a contingency, they're like, oh, that's okay. I didn't expect to go. So it's the emotional attachment. So really, what's disturbing for us as leaders, it's not is how irate we get at the people, the plan, and the processes that fail us when the unexpected happens. And so that's where we got to be awake to. So please, if you're a leader out there, be aware things will not go perfectly, and don't get angry at your people, your plans, or your process when they fail you, because they will fail you if you're emotionally attached to those things.
All right. So that's mistake number one.
Mistake number one.
All right.
Now, inherently, in mistake number two that we make, you've already alluded to it unknowingly, and that is there is no silver bullet.
It's not It's not unknowingly. It's just that I've been making I've been making every mistake in the book for 35 years. I'm still making them.
I know, but it was funny when you said it. There's no silver bullet. There is no silver bullet. We live and anticipate. I mean, I'm telling you, and I'll be honest with you. I mean, I haven't paid nearly $1 million and taken courses for the last 20 years because I felt they would make me feel good. I was for many years looking for that silver bullet. I was looking for the fairy dust. I was looking for the magic pill that would take all the worries away and will allow everything to go smoothly. And there's no such thing. And so the faster we can come to that realization, the easier it'll be to digest that it's what I do and not what the environment is producing. Because every single element that we work in, whether it is in marketing, we talked about the 6 areas. If it's in marketing or lead conversion, lead generation, if it's in sales or lead conversion, if it's in client fulfillment, that just means simply keeping the promises we made. If it's in our management and making sure the management and execution framework stays in place, all those things we work hard at, we build into, and we do a lot to do it. But somebody will read a book like Trash and say, oh, this is a silver bullet if I just had these systems to implement. And listen, I'll tell you, the level 10 meeting and what he's been able to put together, and I've coupled it with Patrick Lencioni.
Wait.
That's my meeting.
Did you just say level 10? Is this the
yes. So
wait, I think my eye's gonna start twitching, right? We're talking
I know, right? But there's nothing wrong with that meeting structure. And it's like that's a great way to get reporting out and stay current on what's taking place. However, if you're expecting it to be a silver bullet that's going to erase all unnecessary verbiage, if it's going to erase all, you're going to be disappointed. And so stop expecting a silver bullet. And so this is the thing. We become, and Gino Wickman actually in his book Traction talks about it. It's called the shiny. It's called the shiny syndrome, where we're looking for the next shiny thing. It's like, oh my gosh, shiny object syndrome, right? And so here we go. We read this book, we listen to this podcast, we hear this thing, and this is going to be the one thing. And we talked about this last week. That dates us a little bit, but the one thing is there's more than one thing. I think it was Curly from City Slickers who put up his finger. The one thing. Listen, the one thing is there is more than one thing, and your thing is not going to be the same as anyone else's, because your design, your drive, and how you build what you build, and the people you need to build it with are always going to be distinct and unique based upon who you are. So stop looking for the bullet.
Don't you think that this has a lot to do with how we started this series in the last couple show when we talked about, when I did the scratch on the record about not changing one job for another, and we're talking about let's get real and all that kind of stuff. We talked about how I call it private education. I think you called it post. What did you call it? Post formal education,
Yeah.
but this industry that has popped up that I think most, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure you're a part of it, because it is the industry where we've gone out and said we're going to invest in ourselves in very specific areas that we want to invest in, and that investment is going to come in one of four asset classes, right? Cash, the stock market, owning your own business, or real estate, or a combination thereof. And there's all of this education out there that's running around promising the silver bullet.
Mm-hmm.
When they put the ad out there, right? So, our ad is the same way, and there's a certain amount of truth to it. And then there's a part of it where you're like, okay, well, you have to make a distinction here to get real. But the ad basically says you can have this great lifestyle without having your own money, without having credit, without having to deal with banks, and all that stuff's true if you know what you're doing. And oh, by the way, you don't have to kill yourself, doing it. And so it seems very silver bullet-ish, right? And so then people who are motivated and really hungry, right, and are hard workers and things like that, they invest in these things. And what I see over and over again is that they invest in these things, and very quickly they don't stick with them. And I think that one of the reasons they don't stick with them is after they get into it for a little while, they realize, oh, this is hard work.
Right.
Right. This isn't the silver bullet. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with it. It doesn't mean that it's a scam. It doesn't mean that there's that I've been taken. It just means that it wasn't a silver bullet. And I think when they buy, they're buying the silver bullet. That's my theory. What say you?
Yeah, and here's the thing. I mean, and I liken it to multi-level marketing. There's so many people that do multi-level marketing, and so many people that are allergic to multi-level marketing. And let me tell you something. This is what I think about multi-level marketing. I've done some speaking and some training for multi-level marketing companies. And sometimes I think, not for the purposes of building a business, sometimes I think it's just the best thing people can do with their time, because they're learning disciplines that will actually empower them in almost every other area of business. And so when you go out there and you put yourself out there, I have a mentor, and many, Howard, you know him well, Joseph McClendon III. He was doing some coaching and in the early 2000s, and basically he was doing some coaching with a guy from Herbalife, one of the bigger multi-levels around. And then he says, he basically said at the beginning of the coaching relationship, saying, hey, as long as you don't try to get me to do any type of multi-level, I'll coach you. And so the guy said, sure.
So Joseph said that.
Joseph said that, right? And so Joseph eventually began to fall for it. He jumped in because he says, you said you don't teach theory. Well, you're teaching all these multi-level people. Why don't you do it? And so he made an agreement to do it. So Joseph went out there on his off time. Now, he's already making multi-millions of dollars, and he can't use his reputation. He can't use his name. He just has to go out there. And he's going out there putting flyers on windows. And he literally built a six-figure a month business without just proving that his theory worked. And he still makes six figures now, even though he hasn't done it for over 15 years. He still makes six figures every single month doing something that he did. And so he wasn't doing it for the money. He was doing it to build within his context a strength and a discipline. And so sometimes people get confused about the silver bullet because they think the silver bullet is going to solve the problem. No, sometimes the way to live you don't lift weights because you think lifting weights, one day you're going to be under a car, one day you're going to have to lift something off your chest. You lift weights to get a result that's not even related to the activity. And so this is what I'll say about the silver bullet. Stop looking for the silver bullet. Look for the activity that is going to build the muscle and the strength and the discipline that you need in order to execute externally what you need to produce. And so I challenge people all the time. You're not lifting weights because you think lifting weights is going to be a necessary activity in your life. You're lifting weights to shape, to tone, to get a result. You're not going out there door to door doing multi-level marketing because you think that's going to get you millions of dollars, but it's going to develop in you a resilience and a tenacity and an activation in order to be able to accomplish. So what we talk about isn't so much the action you need to do. We switch action for activity. What is the activity that you need to do to build the muscles that you need in order to execute that? That's the distinction I want to make. People are looking for the action. The silver bullet is the action. No, we don't care about the action. What are the activities that you're going to need to build the discipline and the strength in order to execute that? That's what we're looking for. And so stop looking for the silver bullet, look for the activity. No action, activity.
Love it. What is the third?
And so the third is, now this is a liftoff. And so here's the thing that everybody says and nobody really wants to embrace. You know how when someone wants to break up with you, they say, it's not you, it's me. I'm going to tell you the opposite.
I use that. I use that as a what would you call it? A funny thing, like just about every week.
Yeah. But let me tell you, in business, it's not me, it's you. That's the big myth. The myth is it's somebody else, it's something else outside of yourself.
Mm.
You have to build you. There
It's
is
the
no other
it's
way
the
to do it.
opposite.
It's
The
the
opposite.
opposite.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
If you don't build you, this is a you and you deal. And if you don't learn how to build you, how to turn yourself, I love what James Allen said in his book, written over 100 years ago. He
Mhm.
says, the outside is your circumstance, the inside garment is your character, but your life is what your life is. And
Mhm.
so when you look at, so it's like wearing a jacket. The inside is your character, the outside is your circumstances. So you're looking at what's happening to you as if it's an anomaly. It's not an anomaly. If
Right.
you're able to build your business, if you're able to grow your business, it's because you've been devoted to building your character. I look at sometimes I look at pieces of paper, like I've got a piece of paper right here, and it's kind of flimsy. Now they say this is made out of trees, so I'm going to take their word for it that somehow this is made out of trees. And so the strength of this and its ability to hold something up is really flimsy because the molecules in it are not as tightly wound together. And yet, if I take a 2x4, because of the strength of the atoms and the molecules and the way they are tightly wound together, I can put a cup on top of it and I'm not afraid of it falling. You see, the strength of character, the character and the essence of a thing is what develops its ability to resist and go through all types of challenges. And so if you don't build you up, if you don't build your strengthening and your mindset and become the person you need to be, you can't expect anything to change in your outside circumstances. And so that's one of the myths. People think if I get $1 million, 98% of people that win the lottery will go broke or bankrupt within 5 years. It's
Yeah.
because they didn't have the character. They didn't do the thing to get the result because they weren't the person who does those types of things. And so, because their character, the be do have axiom, because they aren't the type of person that does the type of work that gets multi-millions of dollars, when they get multi-millions of dollars, they'll self-corrupt and they'll break down and they'll file for bankruptcy within 5 years because
Mhm.
they don't know how to be that type of person, which it makes it completely destructive to those things.
So how are those of us that are in business and folks like me that have been doing it for a long time, what's the mistake that's typically taking place there?
Because we're so busy looking outside of ourselves, even
Mhm.
when we're learning information that talks about transformation. The funny thing is, we're looking, oh, who can I teach this to? Versus
Always, always, right? Didn't you
how do
just
I
go, you just
embody
went,
that?
wait. You just went to Tony Robbins seminar, right? You just went
Yeah,
to the Dallas UPW. I know about, I've got to know about, I don't know, 120 people that were there, right? Like everybody
yeah,
went
yeah.
except me, which is funny because the audience here has heard us quote Tony Robbins forever and ever. But you just went to a Tony Robbins seminar. I swear to God, I have never gone to a Tony Robbins seminar or been listening to that kind of material without thinking, oh, I can really take this and teach it to so and so.
I know we
Oh,
live with this external filter
yeah.
because the assumption is that, and we're not making this arrogantly. The assumption is all things being equal, we don't see anything wrong with ourselves. If we did, we'd change it. We'd actually be fools to constantly be self-critical and criticizing ourselves and say something's really wrong with me. So there's something about our equilibrium and the way we see our world that really matches our self-concept and self-identity. And so when we see a result that we don't have, the first place we go to is what do I need to do in order to achieve that result? Not who do I need to be to become the type of person that produces that result. And when that begins to shift, that's in our own that's self-leadership. And I love the book Leadership and Self-Deception because it really understands it. Until we change ourselves, we can't expect the world around us to really be transformed.
Is it really true though that if we thought that we needed to change, we would? How did you put it? You put it more eloquently than I
Yeah,
did.
if we thought that change was absolutely necessary,
Yes.
see, it's the difference between what we
Mm,
what should happen and what must happen. Until it becomes a must, nothing's going to change. Something that
right.
I should go to the gym. I should eat more healthy. But when the doctor tells you you've got 3 months to live unless you change your diet or do some exercise, I'm telling
Right.
you, your should becomes a must. And that's the transformation that has to take place.
Right. You see it with smokers, women who get pregnant,
Mhm.
who can't quit
Oh,
for
I
shit.
can't quit. I can't quit. I can't quit. They got a baby inside them. All of a sudden, oh my gosh, you haven't seen
Done.
nicotine in 9 months.
Done. Done. Yeah. So yes, the must quit as opposed to the must versus I should.
Yeah. So those are, I think I look at those things, and those are the three things. I think we have to really stop lying to ourselves, and we have to really take the ownership and responsibility, and the things that must become a must, that we must change. We must embrace the fact that there is no silver bullet.
Yep.
There's no magic pill that we're going to be able to achieve. And we have to stop lying to ourselves, because I know it's favorable conditions that we see that are going to last forever, but we know plan survives contact with the enemy. And so we've got to be prepared for the resistance, for the exceptions, and all those things that are going to happen in our way. And when we plan for that, when we don't put all of our eggs in one basket of a silver bullet, and we make the decision to actually to build ourselves up to become the person that needs to become to achieve the success. I know that's a lot of work, but when we bust up those myths and begin to do those things begin to change and transform.
Yeah. So thank you for that, Stephen. It's interesting. So we're working together. You're working on helping me with my strategy and my approach to things. After 35 years, I'm taking a hard look at all of these three things, right? All of these three things. So what's on tap for us this week? What do we have? Let's share just a little bit about what we're working on, because I think it dovetails into this quite a bit.
One of the things that we just want to look at is just looking at the organization and building up. One of the things is vision. The first thing we need to do is build a vision, because until there's a why, we won't do the what.
All right.
And so building up that vision and really getting a picture of what that looks like, what the team looks like, what the future looks like, and really, really insisting on building that out in such a powerful way is those are the first initial steps that we need to take. And as we design the organizational chart and kind of build those things up, it's going to really be interesting to really start achieving those things in a powerful way.
Well, right on. We have run out of time, but Stephen, lying to ourselves, activity versus action, no silver bullet, contingencies, all the things. We're going to be diving into these more when we get back together.
We're going to make magic happen. Thanks so much, Alan.
See you guys on the next show.
Hey, Investor Warriors, thank you for listening to today's episode. If you got something out of this episode or you love our show, remember to subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, and share this out to your friends and family. And here's what I want you to do. If you review us or if you share this podcast to your network, I want you to take a picture, a screenshot picture of that review or of that share, and I want you to send that picture to my email, which is Carrie, spelled Kari, Carrie at theinvestorwarrior.com, because every single week we're going to run a contest. So you will be entered into that contest if you leave a review or if you share the podcast out to someone. And we're going to be giving away all kinds of cool stuff like books from our guests. We're going to be giving away free coaching sessions, virtual lunches where I buy you lunch. We get on a Zoom call together and we talk real estate. So if you want to enter into the contest, remember, leave us a review or share this podcast to your friends and family. Take a screenshot, email it to Carrie at theinvestorwarrior.com, and you will be entered into the contest. And you can do this week after week if you want. Just keep on sharing. All right, thanks guys. We'll see you on the next episode. And remember, you are only one deal away. And by the way, as the lawyers want me to say, everything said on this podcast is my opinion or the opinions of my guests and is not to be taken as investment advice, because I am not your investment advisor. So this podcast is just for your education and entertainment only. And I hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.